22 years since our last visit, it was time to return to the islands with twofold purpose. First, to visit with our friends the Millers on Oahu, and then to see the island of Molokai, where our son and his wife Kate have been living as traveling physical therapists. Leaving from Tampa, Florida, with a connection in Phoenix, Arizona, it was about a 12-hour trip to the Honolulu airport. From there, the Millers took us to their lovely home in Kailua, only a short walk from one of the great beaches on the east coast of Oahu. We were invited to visit Pearl Harbor, where Roger volunteers, helping to restore old airplanes at the Pacific Air Museum on Ford Island. Other sights at Pearl Harbor that we saw at a distance include the Bowfin submarine that sank many Japanese ships during World War II, and the SBX X-band radar. Mounted on a self-propelled drilling rig, the mothballed project has been called a $2.2 billion waste of money. The Pacific Air Museum is housed in two large hangars, still standing from 1941, complete with the bullet holes rendered by the Japanese attackers. George Bush learned to fly in that yellow Stearman, and the two cannons sticking out the rear of Jimmy Doolittle's B-25 are really just broomsticks, making room for more fuel. The following morning, as our time grew short, we saw a few of the sights of Kailua, including the beautiful Lanikai Beach, where we stopped to pose in front of the Mokes, two offshore islands. Too soon it was time to go, and we were boarding our Mokulele flight, flying past Waikiki Beach and enjoying our last sighting of Diamond Head. 22 miles later, we spotted the western shore of Molokai and prepared for landing at the small airport that serves this island of 8,000 people. It was a short drive from the airport to the thriving metropolis of Kaunakakai, and we quickly realized we are no longer in Oahu. Passing quickly through the town, which has no stoplight, we were soon at Molokai Shores, our accommodation for the week. The next morning, we looked out our back door to see the Pacific Ocean, a local fish pond in the foreground, and 9 miles away, the island of Lanai. Ancient fish ponds are a common sight, with gates to let the fish come in and to keep them in. From our rented condo, we could look across a broad lawn to where James and Kate have been living for 6 months. And they could look back at us. They treated us to breakfast before we set out to explore Kaunakakai. Yes, there is a difference between Malamalama Place and Alamalama Avenue, and I think Kaunakakai has more churches per capita than any other place in the world. Perhaps they are praying for gasoline prices to come down. We also learned that Costco products can be bought locally, brought in by barge on Thursdays, and we drove by the hospital with its outstanding physical therapy department. Our next stop was a small Macadamia Nut Farm. How do you harvest macadamias? You simply rake them up into 5-gallon buckets. The next morning, we had breakfast with James and Kate and scrubbed any idea of going kayaking choosing to watch the Patriots game before heading out to Mauna Village and Papahaku Beach Park. After a peek at this 3-mile beach, we viewed the remains of a now-defunct resort area and were treated to sightings of a gray francolin and red-crested cardinals. Our next stop was Maki Horse Beach. Maki means dead. James wasted no time getting into the water while we enjoyed the beautiful scenery and marveled that we could have our choice of 2 beaches practically to ourselves. To our delight, a cloudy sky yielded a beautiful Hawaiian sunset. The next morning, we visited a few local shops and picked up an addition to our turtle collection. Then, despite forecasts of rain, we headed to the east end of the island, the wet end. We saw 2 small churches built in the 1800s and a statue of their founder, Father Damien. As usual, we were the only people around. Continuing on, we saw Turtle Rock and then came into Halawa Valley with its magnificent waterfalls. Where the water from the mountains reaches the ocean, 2 would-be surfers tested their skills without much success. Returning home, we saw a large heiau on the Mauka side of the highway, and on the Makai side, the historic Smith and Bronte crash landing site. This ended a flight across the Pacific the same year Lindbergh flew the Atlantic. The next day dawned windy, but we had sights to see. At the Molokai Museum, we visited a site where an ancient mill powered by mules once delivered the juice from sugarcane into a building where it was processed. The Kalapapa Peninsula on the north shore of Molokai is where the leper colony was located in the 1800s. Today, working people descend the high cliffs on foot while tourists arrive on muleback. A small airport serves the peninsula, and this lighthouse is said to be the tallest in the Pacific. A handful of residents choose to remain in the small town. While in the area, we decided to seek out the magic Phallic Rock. Impressive! Earlier, we saw this birthing stone at the Molokai Museum. There was more to see, but this required a 13-mile drive over a bumpy, narrow dirt road. On our way, we stopped to view a pit, once used to measure the amount of sandalwood needed to fill a ship. The sandalwood in this forest is now long gone. A mile or 2 further, we came to the outlook for some of our most memorable views of the trip. The winds at 3,000 feet were cold, so we snapped a few pictures and were happy to be back in the car. The next morning, we relaxed with a walk around the yard, checking out a few birds, including this African silverbill. Behind the bakery is the alleyway where people line up at night to buy the hot bread. We returned to the eastern part of the island to view the Iliiliopai heiau. It is located on private property, but also on the National Register of Historic Places. Despite light rain, we were able to get across the so-called dry stream bed and see this remarkable structure. The drive home presented some scenic opportunities for photography, including the mo'o, or lizard. We were back to the bakery for Thanksgiving morning breakfast before having a last look around town and seeing, of all things, a lost snow goose. Packing our bags and heading for the airport, we said goodbye to Molokai Shores. Our Cessna crew had us quickly back to Honolulu Airport for our connecting flight to the mainland. And now, for your bonus Hawaiian lesson, say with me, Hau'oli makahiki ho. Hau'oli makahiki ho. One more time, Hau'oli makahiki ho.